It's always exciting when we get to chat with our good friend, our hockey insider, the man who writes for The Athletic and does a terrific job doing it. It's Pierre LeBrun, noted Dallas Cowboys fan. We'll get to North America's team in just a second. But Pierre,
there you go.
We got to talk about Northern Alberta's team, and that would be the Edmonton Oilers. And they have not started off well. A team that a lot of people had as a potential cup winner this year. Jay Woodcroft not making excuses for his team, but he does believe that the effort level is better than what the record shows. So heading into this season, obviously there was high expectations. What's the level of concern right now, Pierre, in this organization?
You know, Jay, I chatted with Oilers GM Ken Holland a couple of days ago, and listen, he said obviously disappointed with having one win on the season, but still very confident in what they have here. You know, this is still the team that led the league in offense last year, that gave Vegas all they could handle in the second round. They're a Stanley Cup contender for a reason, but obviously they need now to bounce back through this adversity, is part of what Holland's message was to me. I'm not concerned right now, Jay. I would say is that if there's another 6-game stretch like we just saw to open the season, then you start to get worried about digging a hole that's difficult to get out of in a league that was so much parity when you see Vegas unbeaten and so on, right, in your own division. I will also say this. You mentioned this at the start about being picked by a lot of people to win the Cup. You know, the two teams that were picked, I think, the most to win the Cup were the Oilers in the West and the Hurricanes in the East. And I think it's interesting that you can draw a line that both those teams have struggled out of the gates. And I don't care what the players say. If you put a camera in front of them, they'll probably lie about this. I'm telling you, when you're not used to hearing your team picked by that many people to win the Stanley Cup before the puck is even dropped, I think there's a psychological adjustment there. I've seen it for many, many years covering this league. And honestly, I think to some level it's also had an effect on both those teams that I just mentioned as far as, oh, maybe this is going to be easier than we thought. Well, this was a wake-up call. And I honestly believe the Oilers are on their way here. I thought they played well in Minnesota. We saw the seeds of the turnaround. I think they're going to string some wins together here.
Pierre, I'm excited about this potential Ottawa Senators-Buffalo Sabres rivalry that we might get to enjoy over the next decade or so, because these are two really good young teams that are ascending at the same time, and they had a heck of a game on Tuesday in that frozen frenzy. Now, Brady Tkachuk will not face a suspension for his late-game instigator penalty on Alex Tuck. What went into the league's rescinding that suspension, Pierre?
Jay, they're just following the rule book, and I think it's a rule that's misunderstood by a lot of us and by a lot of fans. It's 46-1. I'll just quickly read part of it so I don't get it wrong. But if you get an instigator fighting penalty in the last 5 minutes, it's an automatic one-game suspension pending a review of the incident. And basically, if the league has discretion that if it's not related to the score or it doesn't look like it's retaliatory, it's not message sending, quote unquote, to quote the rule book here, then that one-game suspension can be rescinded by the league. And that's what happened here. The league looked at it and said, this is a heat of the moment thing between Tkachuk and Tuck, not a revenge incident, a message sending incident. And the thing to remember is, I know a lot of people were saying, well, did the Senators appeal this? No, you're actually not allowed as a team to appeal this in the moment. It's an automatic review by NHL player safety, George Parros. He reviewed it. He rescinded the one-game suspension.
Pierre, on Tuesday, teams submitted their votes on a decentralized draft, and it appears that received majority support, and we're going to decentralize the draft. I have two questions for you. One of them is a personal question for you, actually. My first question is simply, when will this format be implemented, and what do you think it'll look like? And my second question is, how do you feel about this decentralized draft? Because I know for yourself and a lot of guys like Dregs and CJ, guys who do what you do, being on the floor at the draft is a great way to get information.
Right.
How do you feel about the potential of a decentralized draft?
Right. I'll get to the selfish part of the answer, which is how does that affect me in a moment. But number one, you know, it is an absolute fact that not only was it a yes vote, according to a source with knowledge of the vote, it was a high majority yes vote. for the draft format. It wasn't even close. And I'm not surprised. I mean, I wrote about this a couple of days ago in The Athletic, and I quoted guys like Lou Lamoriello and Ken Holland because they are now, with David Poyle's retirement as GM, they are now the two longest-serving GMs seniority-wise in the NHL. You would think that if anyone wanted to keep the way the things they are, it would be guys like Lou Lamoriello and Ken Holland. They were emphatically in favor of going to this new draft format. And one of the reasons Lou Lamoriello cited was that, now we're stuck with a late draft in June now, Jay, as you know, because ESPN and TNT want the season to only start in mid-October. So you get a draft in late June. The cup can go to June 24th this year, potentially. And so the concern for Lamoriello is you get a draft on June 28th and 29th, like last year in Nashville, and that's what's going to happen next June. July 1st is right there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're ending the draft and getting on a plane and trying to get ready for free agency and qualifying offers also on June 30th. So part of the reasoning for Lamoriello and many other management types around the league is that they found it too difficult to handle now with all these big decisions and trades and signings happening in a 4 to 5 day period. They want to work from their head office. They want to work from their team headquarters. And that's what's going to happen. Now, it may not happen until 2025. What the league has said in its memo is that 2024 might be the last traditional draft, unless they don't finalize plans for that draft soon. They still have not finalized plans for that draft, Jay. They want to have it in Vegas.
Yeah.
As of a couple of days ago, they still haven't finalized a venue. So maybe the door opens up to maybe decentralize even the one in June. But right now, the plan would be 2025.
And
now,
yes.
As far as it affects me, yes.
Right.
Listen, I would say in the lead up to the draft itself, it's nice to be on site and be able to meet with front office sources, and obviously, what we do as insiders, try to figure out what's going on with all the trade talk. But when the draft itself starts, to be honest, you're on your phone.
Right.
You're not going to their table and asking them what's going on. You're on your phone. So whether you're on your phone at the draft, on your phone, in your head office at home, I don't think it's actually going to affect us that much.
Fair enough. Earlier this week, the NHL rescinded its ban on Pride tape. Was there one definitive thing that changed the league's mind, and was it the Travis Dermott incident?
I mean, I would say the Travis Dermott incident, and good on him, by the way, to have the courage to have done that, was probably the tipping point. But I would say there was a series of events that also led to it. I think by the time that happened with Travis Dermott, the league and the NHLPA, certainly the NHLPA, Jay, were aware that other players were planning to do this at some point this season. Some players, I think, were going to coordinate it leading up to their own team's Pride Night. So this was not going to be a one-off with Travis Dermott. There were going to be other players willing, I think, to ignore the ban. But in the meantime, as soon as this was announced 3 weeks ago that there was a ban on Pride tape, the backlash was so severe that Marty Walsh, the head of NHLPA, was immediately on the phone with the league, and because the PA dropped the ball here too. I mean, why were they comfortable going with this to begin with as well, right?
Right.
And they began having back channel conversations right away, and it took a while, but the point here was that they knew they had to find a better solution. And you get Scotiabank too, by the way, a longtime NHL partner that announces on Monday that they're donating 5,000 rolls of Pride tape across the country to celebrate inclusion. You don't think that's a little shot across the bow? I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can say led up to this decision. It's unfortunate that it played out the way it did, but I tell you what, thank goodness they got to the right place at the end of it.
Yeah, give the league credit. I pile on in the league a lot, but they did get it right in the end. Attendance, not just Winnipeg, Pierre, just over 11,000 against the Blues on Tuesday. I look at Buffalo, and I mentioned Buffalo earlier, and they have a heck of a young team, and they're hovering around that 11,000, 12,000 mark. And I wonder, is this really, and we know it's a gate-driven league, this is an important subject, but I wonder, is it less about the product on the ice and more just about the state of the economy right now, especially in cities like Winnipeg and Buffalo?
I think it's a really good point by you, Jay, and I think that's why we got to take a step back and not have a knee-jerk reaction, because I think this is more than just about hockey. I think we're going to see this in a few places this year. I think there's a lot going on in the world right now. I think that there are people going through tough times that have bigger concerns than buying a hockey ticket, more concerned about, paying the rent and paying for groceries. And I'm not trying to, I'm just saying that, I think we're headed into some uncertain times here that will end up having an impact on hockey. Other sports too, by the way, but certainly on hockey. So that's why, by the way, people keep saying the salary cap is definitely going to go up for the next few years. We know it is for next year because the players will have paid their escrow debt back, but I'm not as convinced that we're in for 6-7 years of big salary cap growth because of what we just talked about.
Yeah.
There are some factors in terms of the world economy that might be out of the NHL's hands. So I would say that, yes, of course you're concerned when you see that in Winnipeg, but I think there's going to be concern in other places too before the end of the season. I think it's something to keep an eye on.
A lot is being said about the fact that Leo Carlson, second overall pick by the Ducks in this previous draft, he's been held out of a few games. But this is part of the plan for Pat Verbeek. Just 2 games a week was always the plan. That's how they want to develop him. They want to bring him in slowly, Leo Carlson. How did Verbeek exactly come up with this plan, Pierre?
Yeah, I had a chance to speak with him about it this week, Jay. And, really for Verbeek, it stems back to, Leo Carlson's entire offseason. He had his playoffs back home, and then he had the World Championships, and then the Combine, and the draft, and development camp. And I think Verbeek thought this was a young man who at one point looked fatigued. And I think he made the decision, this is an 18-year-old that has to gain more strength to be a regular in the NHL. And so they made the decision. And I should mention, Leo Carlson's agent, Matt Cater, I spoke to him as well, totally on board with this.
Right.
And so is Leo Carlson, most importantly. But this is unique for the NHL. The plan is to play 2 games a week max for 8 weeks for the first 2 months of the season. And then Verbeek said they would reevaluate where the player is and decide if he can take on more. And Verbeek said, listen, his own personal experience, Jay, when he was a 19-year-old rookie in the NHL, and Verbeek said he hit a wall at the 41-game mark, and always remembered that. And he wants Leo Carlson to have a huge second half, to feel fresh, to have the energy, gain more strength. They got a big strength and conditioning program for him right now. Listen, I get it. Because it's so different, a lot of hockey people aren't sure about this, but good for the Ducks to think outside the box.
Yeah, it's the NHL's version of load management, and it seems a lot more pure than the NBA's version, quite frankly.
Well, it's not 28-year-old players who are at the peak of their career doing it. It's an 18-year-old trying to grow into a man, right?
Exactly.
I think there is a bit of a difference there. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And Pat Verbeek's a great mentor for him to lean on, someone who's been through it. That's an excellent point you made. Pierre, this has been so much fun. I could do this with you every night, but before I let you go, I want to give you the floor because I see that Lone Star over your shoulder there, and I want to know how you're feeling about your Cowboys coming back from the bye week. They're going to be hosting a Rams team that is potentially dangerous, a little better than I think we thought would be this year. How you feeling about the boys against the Rams this week?
Yeah, well, Aaron Donald, the Rams, one of my favorite players in the NFL. I'm sure he is for you as well. So that's a threat right there for the Cowboys. I feel better than I did after the San Fran loss, which was embarrassing, because they came back in LA and played a pretty strong road game, I thought, against the Chargers. So I predict a low-scoring win by the Cowboys defense, 24-20 on Sunday.
And we get the score and everything. We're going to clip that off, and we'll save that for Sunday night's show. Pierre LeBrun, you're a gem. Always great to chat with you. We'll hopefully talk to you again soon. Take care, my friend.
Pleasure to be on. Thanks, Jay.